History books tell you the polished version, the neat version, the version with straight edges. Today we're not doing that. Today we're diving into the messy side of World War II, the strange decisions, the surprising moments, and the 20 facts most people have never heard. If you think you already know this story, get ready, because the real thing hits very differently. The war that started with a line on a map. World War II didn't begin with a dramatic speech or a worldwide countdown. It began in the early morning when Germany decided to roll tanks into Poland as casually as someone entering a room they weren't invited to. One border crossed. One country invaded, and suddenly the world snapped awake. Britain saw the situation like a parent discovering a broken vase. They didn't wait for explanations. On 3rd September 1939, they declared war on Germany, setting off a chain reaction that would pull dozens of nations into a conflict that lasted 6 years and 1 day. Not 6 years, not 7 years, 6 years and 1 day, like the world couldn't end the war without adding that extra awkward pause. At the center of this chaos was Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party. A man whose ideas were so poisonous, they turned an entire continent into a war zone. His hateful beliefs targeted Jewish communities across Europe. What followed were concentration camps where millions of innocent people were forced into brutal conditions, families torn apart, humanity pushed to its breaking point. Two major sides formed: the Allies, the Axis. Think of it like the world's worst group project where half the team wanted peace and the other half wanted to take over the classroom. Meanwhile, technology rushed forward. Radar appeared. Better planes took to the sky. Communication systems upgraded overnight. It was the kind of innovation born not from curiosity, but from survival. And in the middle of all this, ordinary people tried to live normal lives. They dealt with rationing, blackouts, fear, rumors, and the uncomfortable reality that the world they knew was collapsing and they had no choice but to hold on. The Blitz, the skies, and a country running on nerves. If you lived in Britain in 1940, the night sky wasn't for stargazing. It was for listening. Quiet at first, then sirens, then the distant rumble of engines. The Blitz wasn't one event. It was night after night of explosions, fire, and fear as German aircraft targeted major cities. Entire streets vanished in minutes. Families slept in shelters. Children learned the sound of bombers before they learned multiplication. People woke up each morning wondering which buildings would still be standing. It wasn't strength that kept Britain going. It was stubbornness. But Britain's answer came from the sky during the Battle of Britain, the first major battle fought entirely with aircraft. It wasn't just about skill. It was about timing, fuel, weather, and that one pilot somewhere in the clouds trying to stay alive long enough to protect the island below. Leadership changed too. Neville Chamberlain stepped down. Winston Churchill stepped in. Churchill didn't promise comfort. He promised struggle. But he also promised they wouldn't back down. And somehow that message stuck. It became the backbone of a nation that refused to break. Elsewhere, some countries chose to stay out of the chaos. Spain, Switzerland, a few others. They stood off to the side like students hoping the teacher wouldn't call on them. And through it all, millions of men left home to fight, which meant factories, farms, and vital jobs had to be filled by someone else. Women stepped in, proving they were capable of doing every job that society once claimed they couldn't. Children of the war and the strange new normal. Children experienced the war in a way adults often tried to hide. One moment, they were playing outside. The next, they were holding gas mask drills, like it was part of their school routine. In Britain, many kids were evacuated from cities and sent to the countryside. Some cried, some felt relieved, some ended up living with strangers who became unexpected family. Schooling became unpredictable. Lessons sometimes paused for air raid warnings. Teachers had to improvise. But children adapted because they always do. They found moments to laugh. They made games out of scraps. They held on to whatever pieces of childhood they could find. And while the grown-ups focused on strategy, supply lines, and survival, children focused on staying brave. For them, the war wasn't politics. It was noise, uncertainty, and hope. Propaganda filled the rest of life. Posters told people to save food, stay quiet, work harder, and trust the government. In Germany and other Axis nations, propaganda twisted the truth and controlled what people believed. It was a battle of information as much as bullets. Everyday life became something no one could have predicted. Families huddled around radios waiting for updates. Towns rationed food. People traded stories the way we trade messages today. Everyone was just trying to understand a world falling apart and somehow still moving forward. The turning point and the cost no one could count. America entered the war after being attacked in 941, and suddenly the world's balance shifted. Factories produced machines at impossible speeds. Ships crossed oceans with supplies. Soldiers moved across continents. The fighting stretched from Europe to Africa to Asia. Every front demanded something different. In frozen fields, soldiers battled winter more than the enemy. In deserts, they struggled against heat and sand. At sea, ships faced storms, submarines, and the fear of vanishing beneath the waves. The death toll kept rising. By the end, around 55 million people had lost their lives. It's a number so large that it almost stops feeling real. But each of those lives was someone with dreams, fears, memories, and a future that was stolen. As the war dragged on, both sides pushed the limits of what was possible. Some countries used codes and spies. Others developed new weapons. Every decision felt like a gamble with the world at stake. And yet somehow, in the middle of the chaos, moments of humanity still appeared. A shared cigarette, a letter from home, a fragile piece of hope passed between hands that were tired of fighting. Surrender, and the world that walked away from the fire. The war's ending didn't feel clean. Victory rarely does. Germany fell first in 1945. Hitler ended his own life as his empire collapsed around him. But the war didn't officially close until Japan surrendered on 2 September 1945, drawing a line under 6 brutal years. When the smoke cleared, the world looked unrecognizable. Cities were nothing but concrete skeletons. Families searched for missing loved ones. Soldiers returned home and tried to fit back into lives that had moved on without them. But out of the devastation came something unexpected. Nations gathered to create the United Nations, hoping cooperation might prevent another disaster. New borders were drawn, new agreements formed, new futures imagined. World War II changed technology. It changed politics. It changed society. But more than anything, it changed the way the world understood itself. It showed how fragile peace really is and how quickly ordinary life can disappear. These 20 facts are not just history. They're warnings, lessons, reminders of what humanity is capable of, for better or worse. And the truth is, most of the real stories didn't make it into textbooks. They lived in diaries, photographs, whispered memories, and the silence of people who saw more than they could ever explain.